Morning, everybody. A little bit of Zoom struggles this morning. So my apologies for being a little late. Welcome to day, I don't even know what it is anymore. I've lost track. All that to say is, I will tell you, people are answering phones. So pick up the phone, call and connect with your sphere, and get some connections. All right, we're still in shift. We're in creative financing. We've talked about permanent and temporary buy downs. We've talked about seller financing, and today we are going to talk about contract for a deed and when you would use a contract for a deed. So I want to read this, and it's on page 205. It says contract for deed works just like owner financing with one extremely important exception. Ownership doesn't change hands until the entire sales price is paid in full. So I got to talking this through with Scott this morning, and I was like, all right, what's the difference between, I know what seller financing, you're going to get the deed up front. Okay, so they're going to own and get the deed up front in seller financing. The buyer is. Contract for a deed, you're going to own it, but you're not going to get the deed until after you've paid off the entire loan. So those are the two different differentiators. But then all that to say is, I was like, all right, well then what's the difference between that, between a rent to own? I started going down this path, and then and really started to make sense to me. When a contract for a deed is typically going to be a good idea for a seller or a buyer, you're typically dealing with a seller's property that maybe a little bit deteriorated, may not have, maybe in a rural area, right? It's not a traditional house, right? So that's a key piece here for y'all to understand. So if you've got land, you see contract for a deed a lot in land purchases. So I'm going to go over the nuts and bolts of this, and I did a checklist for y'all for seller financing, where if you had this for the seller and you have this for the buyer, you could probably do seller financing to match the deal. And on that checklist, I also had things for you to look out for in terms of protecting your clients if you were working with the seller or if you're working with the buyer. And I'm going to do the same for contract for a deed. But I'm going to pull this up because I want us to dive into this over here. Give me one second. Okay, that's not it. Hold on. Where did my sheet go? Nope. Hold on one second, y'all. I don't know where I put it. There we go. All right. So I'm trying to simplify this so that y'all just have checklists so that you can revert to checklist and then get an attorney involved if both sides match up. But it says contract for a deed is obviously what I just said, delayed title and real ownership. You're buying the property now if you're a buyer, and the seller is financing instead of the bank. So buyer gets ownership, seller keeps legal title until it's fully paid. Buyer still pays for property taxes, insurance, and any of the maintenance on the property. And it says the seller may be able to cancel the contract, and those vary by state. I think this is very interesting. And I'm going to start diving into this as well. But Tennessee state laws and Mississippi state laws matter with these types of contracts. So does rent to own. So we're going to touch on a little bit of that in the future. But I want y'all to have an all-encompassing viewpoint of these different types of deals. Number one, for yourself for wealth building, and number two, so that you can help move more property creatively and not just get stuck in the traditional financing methods. So it says, think of contract for a deed as owner financing without a deed transfer. So again, deed transfers at the end. The buyer still owns the property. They're still responsible for all the things. However, the deed isn't transferred until it's paid in full. Where the benefit of that is the seller, we'll talk about that in a minute, because you can make a lot of money if they default. All right, it says common cases. Buyers can't qualify for traditional financing and investors structuring creative deals. This kept popping up, rural or off-market properties. So it says when this would make sense for a seller. Number one, you want monthly income and a sales price premium, right? So you can do above market interest rates. You could do a higher price, which Gary talks about in the book. His dad did this on a land deal, and the buyer defaulted 4 times. They were able to keep the property and not foreclose on the property, and they kept doing additional contract for deed and essentially made a ton of money off of it. And he said it actually funded him and his sister's college tuition. So it says the property is hard. I think this is a big one to finance traditionally. So rural properties, non-conforming homes, mixed use or unique assets, and properties needing seasoning or light rehab. So if you see that this property that you're about to sell may fall into some of these buckets, you may want to talk to the seller about potentially looking at a contract for a deed, okay, or seller financing, whatever makes the most sense for them. All right, then it says seller, obviously, which we've talked about this, if the seller wants to defer capital gains and they want to spread that out so that they don't get hit with capital gains tax. Number four, you want leverage if your buyer defaults. This is a big one. In many states, including Tennessee, seller may cancel the contract instead of foreclosing, which means the seller gets to keep all the prior payments and the property. So that's on the sell side. Oh, sorry, we've got one more. You trust the buyer more than you would the bank. On the buy side, you can afford the home, but not bank financing yet. You want ownership control, not just a lease. So you want to actually control and own the property, where rent to own, you're just leasing. Number three, the property won't qualify for traditional financing. So say you're wanting to purchase something in a rural area, you need you're wanting to purchase something, but it needs a light rehab that won't be a part of a non-conforming loan, has zoning issues, blah, blah, blah. Number four, you're buying from a seller willing to work with you. And number five, you have a clear refinance strategy. So, i.e., credit score improvement plans, debt pay down timeline, and income seasoning, self-employed buyers especially. And it says, if you don't know how you'll exit, don't enter. Here's the deal. I'm going to take it off of this for a minute. I'm going to do a checklist for this, and then I'm going to do pitfalls and liabilities for both parties. If y'all do not know how to, whoever you're representing, to explain this is how the deal is structured, right? So here's your checklist. This is the liabilities involved, and this is the exit. And all of that has to be written into an agreement anytime you go into any agreement. So understanding the terms, understanding what the risks are, and then understanding what the exit is. And I'm saying this for y'all as well as wealth builders in real estate, or any type of agreement you ever get in. You should always understand the entry point, the terms, and the exit. So all that to say is, I do think if you're selling land or you're listing in a lot of rural areas, contract for a deed is probably a good one for y'all to learn more about and consider utilizing. I'm going to do it, like I said, I'm going to do the checklist like I did on the other one, as well as the liability and risk involved, so that y'all have that. And we'll start going over that next week. I know this is boring, but if you don't understand all of these different types of structures for deals, you're doing yourself a disservice as a wealth builder, and you're going to do your clients a disservice. So just saying, hey, it doesn't fit in the traditional box, I guess I'm not going to be able to sell it, isn't how we roll. So understand that we've gone through seller financing, and there is a checklist for that. If you don't have it, let the office know. And then we also have now a contract for a deed. We're going to go over, because we get this a lot, I know, in our area. We get, hey, I'd be interested in rent to own. So we're going to go over that as well. Questions around this? Thoughts on this? I'm taking y'all to law school today. Oh, it says, Meet, I think you're talking, but I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. So, seller financing contract and contract for deed are basically two different things.
They're two different things. And the biggest differentiator, as simple as I'm going to probably be able to make it for everybody, because that was one of my questions, Asmina. For a seller financing deal, the buyer is on the deed at the beginning. So even though the buyer hasn't fully paid off that loan that the seller is lending them, they're still on the deed. On the contract for deed, the buyer is not on the deed. They still remain liable for taxes, maintenance, insurance, all of those things, but they're not going to get the deed until they pay that loan off from the seller.
makes sense.
It does seem that for land and anything that is a non-conforming home, that may not be able to get financing from a bank, from a buyer can't purchase it because it's a non-conforming loan or property, or would be a non-conforming loan or property. It does seem like contract for a deed is the way, if it works
So,
for both parties.
Sarah, how you would work this out, you would go to a lawyer to write this up because I
Yep.
can't. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna have these checklists, but y'all, these are Chat GPT checklists. And then my goal is like, how do we take this very convoluted subject matter and then we break it down to a checklist and then we break it down to risk. And then if y'all feel like it's meeting some of these boxes, Alicia, you just said it is. I want to make sure that y'all then take that to an attorney and say, hey, what am I missing here? Does that make sense? So that you can clearly explain it. Hey, Sammy, we're gonna go into subject twos later. That'll be another one that we're gonna visit. Because y'all get a lot of subject twos, I know, as well. So anyway, I know that this is like I said, this is not a easy subject matter. However, if we can break this down and understand, hey, this is our toolkit, and I can use these tools to gain more listings and move more property, then that's the goal, right? So I don't want y'all to just get stuck in the traditional way of doing things. But to Linda's point, you got to have an attorney so that you could say, hey, what do I need to communicate with the sellers? And what do we need to make sure that we draft, i.e. the attorney draft, to make sure it's meeting and protecting your client. I'm going to say this too. You also have to understand where you're getting paid in the deal. So understand with seller financing and contract for a deed, the sellers aren't getting a huge lump sum of money up front. So who's going to pay you? Is it going to be the buyer and you're going to represent the buyer, or is it going to be the seller and the seller is going to pay you? So understand you've got to get that done up front so that everybody's on the same page. You always need to know how you're getting paid, and then you always need to understand all the terms surrounding it, the risk, and then the exit. So,
Hey,
Sammy,
Sarah?
you're just unmuted.
Yes.
Yes.
I was gonna say, in what example would a seller give a buyer to put them on the deed? You know, like,
So
yeah,
a contract for deed, you're going to see it a lot in land deals, Sammy.
okay,
If there's I'm just saying a mobile home maybe on a large piece of plot of land, maybe that would be a contract for deed. If the home is a little bit deteriorated, but a buyer's still willing to buy it, and it can't go the traditional financing route because of the property is a little bit deteriorated, that may be a contract for a deed. It's essentially the property may not meet the traditional financing standards for a bank to want to hold it as an asset.
and if the buyer stops paying, is it difficult for the seller to get them off that deed, or?
But that's a great question. So contract for a deed, the seller's not on the deed yet. They're not on it till they pay it in full.
The seller or the owner? The buyer?
I'm sorry, the buyer is not on the deed. For contract for a deed, they don't get access to the deed until they paid off the financing.
Okay,
So would it be like you'd evict them like a tenant?
Yeah, well, you can evict them, and then it says, and this is where the Tennessee laws come into play, it says that you don't have to foreclose on it. You can just take all of their payments, and then you can evict them. So the difference is, just so I'm going to say it super clear, for seller financing, where is the deed given to the buyer? Somebody unmute yourself.
At closing, because they're going to close on it like a normal, right?
Correct. So seller financing, the deed for the buyer is up front. For contract for a deed, when is the buyer given written in on the deed? When they paid off the what?
When they pay off
Full
the
amount.
entirety of the loan.
Then they paid off the loan. So Sammy, to your point, in Mississippi and Tennessee, this is where y'all want to make sure you're talking to if you're representing the buyer, you've got to find out, all right, they're not on the deed, so what is their risk, right? If you're representing the seller, what is my risk if they default? Does that make sense? So understanding those questions to ask the attorneys so that whoever you're representing is covered. because the state laws are going to come into play with this. Yes, and how they are protected. All that to say is I want us to lean into this and not run away from it. So I so appreciate all your questions. And we do have these one sheets that are going out. But again, if it's Alicia, to your point, if you've got somebody that this may be a good fit for, make sure that you get with an attorney and verify some of these things so that you're protecting your client. And just understand if y'all are doing either one of these, you got to figure out how you're going to get paid. Make sense? Super riveting conversation today. Somebody unmuted themselves. Says Mita, were you saying something? No. Well, I'm going to bring a little bit of excitement to the call. My dear husband I'm just going to make up an age today, 25 today. He was born 25 years ago. He's looking at me and kind of smirking and laughing. So if y'all can wish him a happy birthday, I'd greatly appreciate it. So y'all let me know if y'all need anything. Please stay safe, stay warm. I would encourage y'all to go and take a peek at this book. This is awesome. And it has so many different things for y'all to look at in terms on Friday. Y'all let me know if you need anything. I'll see y'all tomorrow. Have a good one. Bye, everybody.